So welcome to the 2018 Oklahoma Transportation Research Day, a joint effort of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the Southern Plains Transportation Center. Transportation Research Day is a long tradition that has grown from its humble beginnings of ODOT in-house research presentations in the ODOT building in the small commission room of old with the red carpet and the red theater chairs. Who remembers the red carpet and the red theater chairs? Yeah. So we've upgraded the commission room since then. And now, in 2012, we moved to our first offsite venue for Transportation Research Day. And now this is a beautiful, great venue here at Metro Tech. And we have definitely outgrown the commission room. So thank you for being here today. With the excellent participation of our research institutions and their principals, investigators, and students, the support of the SPTC staff and the ODOT Office of Research and Implementation staff, we are pleased to share with you today a glimpse at both the future of transportation currently being formed and evolving, and the ongoing efforts of research, implementation, and innovation. From the new technologies with the potential to transform society and transportation, to using big data to understand system performance, to optimizing bridge and pavement performance considering the new normal of extreme weather, I hope you find the day to be a glimpse into what may be and how we can be better prepared for that future. Also joining me today to welcome you is Dr. Tom Landers, Dean of the Gallagly College of Engineering at the University of Oklahoma, and Dr. Paul Tikalsky, Dean of the College of Engineering, Architecture, and Technology at Oklahoma State University. Here they go.
Well, good morning and welcome. This is an outstanding turnout for what is a very important program, and we're looking forward to a very productive and substantive day. A special thanks on behalf of all of us for those who've had such an important role in building this to what it is and preparing for this day's events. I think about Secretary Patterson and his leadership role, Dr. Musharraf Zaman and the work that he did to make Transportation Research Day the great success that it is now. Also, I've had the opportunity to have conversation with Dominic Pittenger, Teresa Stevens, and many others of you. I teach a course of sophomore students that's at 10:30 this morning, and so I will be leaving before then, but I'm going to be returning and joining you for the rest of the day. Among the many things that this program does, I know many of you, like me, appreciate the fact that this program gives you convenient and substantive technical expertise and professional development hours to retain our PE licensure. This last year, I had to go to the NSPE meeting in Las Vegas because I needed a few more hours before the deadline. So this is an important opportunity for all of us. This is about the transportation infrastructure that's so vital to public health and safety and to the growth of our state economy. So the Research Day is an opportunity for us to be more aware of STEM education and its importance for our industry, but really for our entire state safety and economic progress. So I'm among those who are at the kind of the backside of their career. Many of you are also, like me, a baby boomer. I say boomer, you say sooner. Maybe not all of you. But I also want to recognize our keynote speaker, Greg Winfrey, from the Texas Transportation Institute at Texas A&M University. And it's now my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Paul Tikalsky, Dean of Engineering at Oklahoma State University.
Thank you, Tom. It's my pleasure also to welcome you all here for this fantastic opportunity to take research and move it into the field. And the implementation of these kinds of ideas has been going on for a long time. This is my, I guess, 40th year in transportation in some form. I started off as a grader operator when I was 17. And so as we look at these kind of things, now we're coming to a place where the infrastructure that we had over the last 10 years or last 100 years might become quite different in the next 100 years. With autonomous vehicles, we're going to have a session on connected vehicles. The kind of technologies that bring us forward are really going to change, give all of you an opportunity to kind of turn your career to think about how is the transportation infrastructure, how is the safety aspects of it become quite different. And I hope that the ideas that come from today, the discussions you have with the people doing the posters and so forth, lead to new ideas that give us an opportunity to start new projects. And so as we talk with Secretary Patterson and Dawn Sullivan and Dr. Winfrey, I think we have really an opportunity to have that broader discussion about how do we as a surrounding set of states, the Southern Plains states, become a corridor by which we can have an advanced infrastructure for transportation operations. And so I hope you have a fantastic day and you have some great ideas and discussions come out of today. And so thank you very much, Dawn. It's all yours.
All right, we'll move right along to our first keynote speaker. I don't think he's a stranger to anyone in this room. So Mike Patterson was appointed Executive Director of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation in 2013. And in June 2017, he was appointed Secretary of Transportation to serve on Governor Mary Fallon's cabinet. Prior to serving as Executive Director, he was the Deputy Director and Chief Financial Officer for the agency since September of 1999. So before that, Mike served as Comptroller for the agency for 15 years. And I believe we discussed that we were both legacies. His father also worked for the Department of Transportation. Mike's been very active with AASHTO and serves in a leadership capacity at several committees. He's earned his Bachelor's of Science in Accounting and a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Central Oklahoma. Help me welcome Secretary and Executive Director Mike Patterson.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate the long introduction again. Good morning. Oh my gosh. Are you guys back row? Are you there? Yeah, okay, good, okay. Good morning. There you go, there we go. You know, I wish there were some guys here from Division 3 because about a year ago we had a division dinner and it was kind of set up like this, and so I flipped the room on them and I took the microphone back there. And that was a little disheartening for some people because they ended up on the front row and they got punished a little bit for trying that. Before I get started this morning, I just want to recognize today is an anniversary of the death of one of our employees who died in the line of duty. Leon Harp died in 1991, a maintenance worker who was just out doing his duties alongside the highway, and he was one of the 61 ODOT employees who have died in the line of duty since we got started. 61 is more than all other state agencies combined, with the exception of the military. So it is something that we really take to heart, work zone safety. And comes to mind work zone safety in the last 5 years, there's been 85 fatalities in Oklahoma work zones. 5 of those are ODOT employees, and the other 80 were people traveling through those work zones. So that's why we preach so much about work zone safety. It's certainly about our employees and your employees who work in those work zones, but it's just so much more about the people who are traveling through those work zones. I've got a short PowerPoint presentation. Going to have more talking than PowerPoint because I need Mr. Winfrey to come up and give us a Texas perspective because I'm really anxious to hear about that. I'm going to talk, if this is working. There it is. So I'm going to go back, and some of you have heard this story, but back in 2012, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I'm losing sleep over the notion of autonomous vehicles. At that AASHTO meeting, there was a futurist that spoke to us, a keynote speaker, and a futurist, if you've ever heard them, they don't tell you what the future is going to be. They tell you what the past is and what the future could be. And they kind of enlighten you and make you look around and see what's going on now and compare it to what is being talked about. So at that time, and if you've ever been to church and you think the preacher's talking to you, he was talking to me. Because I'm thinking, autonomous vehicles, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We've got to get some stripe. Oklahoma's striping is not good. You know, we know the cars are going to follow the stripe, and now we know the cars will follow the stripe, but they'll follow a lot of things as technology has changed. So in 2012, again, I'm thinking 2030, they're going to get here, and he says, so you think autonomous vehicles are going to be here in 2030? And I go, yes. Under my breath, I said, yes. And he said, you're wrong. They're going to be here sooner than that. And so he demonstrated all of the things that are going on in today's society in 2012 that would lead you to believe technology is doubling. It's going to be here sooner than that. And if you look around, it is here sooner than that. Just by a quick show of hands, how many of you have vehicles that will brake on its own? Whether the ball runs out or the car, let me see how many. Okay, all right. How many have lane departure control on the steering wheel? You got a few folks. You know, we are driving autonomous vehicles. Can you imagine the next time, like tomorrow, you go in to buy your next car, and the dealer says, well, here's your car. I know it doesn't have a steering wheel. It's got a button. You push it. It takes you wherever you want. Would you get in that car? No way. There's no way you get in that car. But you're slowly being integrated into autonomous vehicles. You're getting used to having a car that brakes by itself or that will stay in its lane by itself. You're going to love it when it gets here. I know it doesn't seem possible, does it? I'm not sure it is. I say that. But as you see the impacts that are being made by the technology that's in the cars today, and there are autonomous vehicles on our roadways. I heard a report the other day, there are 43 companies driving on California freeways today that are operating autonomous vehicles. You see it in Austin, Pittsburgh, Michigan. So, and last night, I got to tell you this quick story. So last night, Dawn will appreciate this because she knows I like a good Tesla when I see one. So I walk out of the grocery store, right there in Edmond, Oklahoma, and here's a Tesla S. I mean, it's a piece of art. It's not a car, it's a piece of art. And the lady is loading her groceries. I said, I just want to know, I want you to know I love your car. And she said, I love my car too. So we got to talking about it. So I got to hear all about her Tesla. I asked her, I said, do you have the autonomous feature on it? She said, yes. She admitted, yes. Do you use it? Yes. Well, she didn't want to tell me because it's against the law, right? Because our laws are so far behind. So she's operating autonomously with her Tesla S in Oklahoma. So we as a state, most states are like this, have not caught up with the technology and the manufacturing and the driver's wants. So that's why we created Driving Oklahoma, an autonomous and connected task force working group. I'm not going to read those. I try to recite all the members, but I always leave one or two off. So I finally decided to put it on there so I wouldn't leave anybody off. But you can see who is on and participating. Unlike some other states, I think there's 6 of these in the country, maybe 7. But I wanted to include the cities and the counties because they are going to be having to change ordinances as regulations in cities. You can see the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Dean Tikalsky is prominently on our panel and asked some great questions. We have met 3 times. So we've been only operating 3 months, and you might say, well, what took so long to get it started? Well, it was really advice and counsel from other states like Michigan, California, and Pennsylvania, who already had this in place, and they told me just to wait, and then they finally told me last spring to go. So we got started. We're in the education mode. Right now we're trying to make sure that everybody knows what's going on current. A lot of these people walked in the room and didn't really understand what an autonomous vehicle was and if it was even out there. So when Uber made their presentation, it was really eye-opening. We've had 3M make presentations about some of the things they're doing with striping and signage and the like. It's eye-opening. So we're in our education phase before we begin to really have to make some changes to regulations, state statutes, and ordinances. One of the things, or the low-hanging fruit, as we have discussed, is vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, where the vehicle will be talking to traffic signals and the rest of the infrastructure to know what dangers are ahead, what's lurking ahead for the driver. But then the one that we're absolutely going to take on this legislative session is the notion of truck platooning. We had an interim study last week at the State Senate, and it was interesting because right now, Don is in the process of entering a memorandum of understanding with Tennessee, Arkansas, of course, Oklahoma. Tennessee and Arkansas allow truck platooning. Oklahoma does not. Texas does. We do not. So we're trying to get up to speed with the rest of the country because North Carolina to Oklahoma wants truck platooning. So we have to do something to make that a safe, effective operation. As we continue on, as I said, we're going to get into more of the meat and bones of the situation. I hope that next year when we have this same gathering, we will have more information and more things to share with you. So as we had a presentation, and I've heard this before, we had a presentation last time by the Oklahoma automobile dealers who I really think they don't see shared services, shared rides being a big deal. They think everybody's going to continue to own their own vehicles. Of course, that's what they want. they don't see autonomous vehicles happening. They talk about how long it takes the fleet to turn over. So some of you have, where am I pointing this? Well, I'll skip that. Some of you have heard about the latest announcement by the Buy for Less grocery chain here in Oklahoma City. Buy for Less, Uptown Grocers, and a couple other brands that they have. They have been talking to a company called UDelv, and this is a UDelv van that is an autonomous grocery delivery service. When Buy for Less and UDelv heard that we had our Driving Oklahoma Task Force working group, they came forward and told me that they were looking to make this announcement next summer, that they were bringing this service to Oklahoma City. But once they heard about what we were doing, they felt comfortable that something was going on with the state of Oklahoma that would allow some acceptance, some public acceptance. So they have started the process of mapping out radius around their stores. So it'll take them 9 to 12 months to do what they need to do to get started, and then they're going to start autonomous grocery delivery. In the first year, they'll have a safety driver in the vehicle. In the second year, they won't. So that's the plan. We'll see if it works. I hope it does. I hope it does. If you have an opportunity, go out to the UDelv, UDELV website and watch a couple of videos, UDELV. Watch a couple of videos, and they've got a safety driver in one of them, the other one they don't. But it's an interesting concept. They really believe that the first acceptance by the public will be the delivery of freight rather than passengers. Because we're not worried about our groceries getting run over, I guess. So the notion of the fleet turning over. I showed this last year, I think it was, in this room. So some of you have seen it, so bear with me. If you look at this picture, and this talks about how quickly we can accept things. So this is 1900, New York City, Easter Sunday, and the red arrow is pointing toward the only horseless carriage, or the only automobile. The rest of them were horse-drawn buggies, 1900. Okay? This picture, 13 years later. The arrow is pointed toward the only horse-drawn buggy. So in 13 years, the whole fleet turned over. What I think about there's a couple things I think about when I look at this picture. 1913, Easter Sunday, New York City, the fleet's turned over. What else has changed? There's a guy who lost his job. That's the guy that used to pick up the horse manure on the street. And there's a guy that got a job, and he's a personal injury attorney, and maybe the guy down at the body shop. So you can see how culture has changed during that time. Certainly we're driving, our transportation looks different, but things around transportation have changed as well. But as you get into autonomous vehicles, the biggest problem, as I see going forward, certainly will be the acceptance, but it will be how you merge the autonomous vehicle, whether it be one like today's Tesla where it's got a steering wheel and it's doing what it's doing, or if it's just the push button kind, and me, and my '68 Mustang, which has autonomous zero. So you're mixing traffic, right? So they got a mixture of traffic right there. So imagine me and my '68 Mustang at about 85 years old with all those autonomous vehicles. What are we going to have to do about that? Because we're going to continue to have people driving their old cars while the autonomous vehicles are working. I just want to show you the next slide, just to show you how quickly things can change and will change. This is the interstate system in 1970. Now, there's more interstate highways today, but this is the interstate system in 1970. So 14 years earlier, Eisenhower signed the bill to create the interstate system, and this is what we got. How quickly was that? We accepted it. It came. It changed the way we do business in the country. So as we continue to look forward, as we continue to look toward the future, and we know technology is doubling every year as we advance every year, and the notion that we're already being converted to that vehicle of the future. It's already here. It's just whether or not we can accept it. The other interesting thing I want to share with you is last week at the IBTTA, International Bridge Tunnel and Toll, I get them backwards, Association meeting in Baltimore. The Boston Consulting Group talked about that if you take the largest 45 cities in the United States, so just take the biggest 45, think NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, all those cities. They account, in those 45 cities, they account for 50% of the vehicle miles traveled annually. Okay? 45 cities, 50%. Their prediction is that by 2030, 50% of that 50% of vehicle miles traveled will be done so by shared electric vehicles. By 2030, shared electric vehicles. Okay? So, one might extrapolate that that's 25% of the vehicle miles traveled in the country. 50% of 50%. Okay? So we've got 25%. There's two things going on there. If we don't do something about the revenue part of that problem, the Highway Trust Fund at the federal level is going to lose about $7 billion in an already deficit situation, and the states will lose approximately $10 billion of that revenue situation because we're going to lose a motor fuel tax. But then you get into the discussion about shared vehicles, ride sharing. So Uber and Lyft are going to be doing their thing, and maybe somebody else by then. So do we have a parking problem then? Because the cars are not parking, we have a curb problem. We don't have enough curb space to pull the cars over to let people out. So the thing changes over time and what that looks like. It was interesting, the day we kicked off Driving Oklahoma, Governor Fallon came over, gave us her perspective. She's had some discussion about this with the National Governors Association. And as we're walking out, I was walking her out to her car, of course surrounded by security, but I'm walking her out to the car. And she said, you know, she was at Quail Springs Mall the other day. Greg, that's a big mall here on the north side of the city. And there's parking spaces everywhere that never get used except between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And she said, you know, the land use may have to change. If all this ride sharing is going to happen and people are not going to own their cars, what does that look like? Do the cities do they continue to have to require so many parking spots? It's a great question. don't know the answer. I wish we knew what the future was. If we knew what the future was, it'd be easy. And it's not easy, and that's why you guys are here, and that's why you guys are in transportation, is because we have to be ready to anticipate whatever is going to happen. Do I have time for questions? Am I supposed to take questions? Do I get to take questions? Okay, I stand for questions, Mrs. Sullivan says. Thank you. Okay, am I going to read those?
We do have a couple of questions. The first is, will the regional transportation planning organizations be included in the autonomous and connected vehicle working group in the future?
Certainly, if there's a need and a desire, we'd love to have them part of the group.
The next question is legislation. My
Same
eyes.
thing.
Legislation starting to be introduced to address autonomous vehicles. And I'm not sure if that's federal or state level.
Certainly at the state level it will be. As you may have noticed, I purposely put legislators, the 4 chairs of our transportation committees, on the Driving Oklahoma, because we do need to begin to look at how are we going to address autonomous vehicles. So if I saw that lady at the grocery store going down the street and she doesn't have her hand on the wheel, certainly today she's violating the law, but she doesn't need to put her hands on the wheel. So in the future, you know, every officer is going to expect 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and she doesn't. And how are they going to check that? I mean, I don't know how they know that. Do we have to have a sticker somewhere? But yes, we're going to have to address those situations.
When do you anticipate that happening?
I would anticipate that to happen in the 2020 session. We'll take up truck platooning this session in 2019, and perhaps some other things that would set the stage for a full autonomous discussion in 2020.
The next comment mentions the influence of marijuana laws.
That's a great question, and Bashart would be happy to answer it. I suppose, this is, I'm kind of simple like this. If it's legal to drink but illegal to drink and drive, I suppose it's going to be legal to partake marijuana and be illegal to be under the influence while you're driving. Maybe there's something more to it than that. I don't know. I hope there's not.
There's a couple of questions that are on the comments page also that I wanted to address, but I'd like to also emphasize that if you could put it in the question feature, that would be a little bit easier for us to facilitate.
So they put it in the wrong category?
Well, we're all learning
We
here
have to
today.
follow instructions, kids. Let's do this.
Do autonomous vehicles and pedestrians mix?
I'm sorry.
Do autonomous vehicles and pedestrians mix? The
Whoever it was
multimodal.
is not convinced. Yeah. Well, we saw an incident in the Phoenix area, where it didn't mix too well, but we now know more about that situation, that the car wasn't fully equipped like it should have been. But I certainly believe that they do mix. It's a situation where of course, safety comes first in all of these discussions, and I don't think that it's going to be any different. Quite frankly, it may be safer under an autonomous vehicle than it will be in a zero autonomous vehicle, because there's going to be more than these 2 eyes with all the cameras that are associated.
Next is, where do we focus implementation of autonomous vehicles first? Inner cities or highways?
You know, and this is one of the discussions that we have kind of ongoing. You know, for me, it seems that it is inner city. But I could be quickly persuaded otherwise to go with highways. But I think it's going to, if it's demonstrated at a slower speed, where if something does go wrong, that it won't be the high-speed horrific collision that we see on highways, that maybe at 25 miles an hour or 30, it might be better suited, I think, initially. That's my thinking at the moment. And so it draws to the notion that I continue to have about California. I told you about all the companies that are operating in California, and you think about all the gridlock they have on their highways. So I don't know how much testing they're really doing if they're sitting on the 5. I don't know what that looks like.
How do motorcycles fit in with autonomous vehicles? No one buys a 68 Mustang or motorcycle to have it drive itself.
What was the first part of that?
How do motorcycles fit in as an autonomous vehicle or on the road with an autonomous vehicle?
Or a 68 Mustang.
That too.
Yeah. I have heard some discussion about an autonomous motorcycle, which is just floors me, but I think it fits in nicely. I think it works out okay, because it's going to be just like me, and it's going to be that challenge for us. I think the harder vehicle is going to be the zero autonomous car or truck, because we don't stay as tight in our lanes as an autonomous vehicle would, and a zero autonomous motorcycle doesn't take up that much space. So, you know, the weaving part, because some of the discussion about once we get into more autonomous situation, autonomy, perhaps we can narrow down the lanes with the same amount of concrete or asphalt we have today and add capacity just because of the ability of the vehicle to stay tight on the road.
What is the department's liability when there's a fatality involving an autonomous vehicle?
I don't think it would be any different than it is today, our liability as it relates to fatalities we have today. We often see a lawsuit related to fatalities on our highways today that may or may not be a condition of the highway.
Are Oklahoma roads ready to receive autonomous vehicles?
I don't think so.
Is there an initiative to educate the public to trust thinking machines such as autonomous vehicle?
There is. It's in the beginning stages of educating the public. I think it's going to take all of us on that Driving Oklahoma group when you're talking about AAA and the Oklahoma Trucking Association, along with ODOT and the Department of Public Safety and the Turnpike Authority, to have that discussion and assure people that it is as safe or safer than the current vehicles.
Are there economical options for implementation to begin now?
Economic options. I think there are, but again, I think the implementation is more controlled by public acceptance and state statute. With UDEL moving to Oklahoma City with their demonstration that will become actual operations, I think once the public sees that occurring, I think there'll be more public acceptance. Those first few discussions about fully autonomous vehicles in the state legislature. It's not going to be a fun discussion. I'm really not looking forward to that.
Is the autonomous industry and community looking at how to use vehicle-to-infrastructure communication for collecting data, road condition surveys, ADT, maintenance, and performance management purposes?
Well, that's a whole nother seminar, but yes. Yes, they are. We at the DOTs have come to recognize, and probably did 3 or 4 years ago, that the largest asset that we own is not concrete or asphalt anymore. It's data. It's the data that we've all collected all these years, and we continue to collect every minute and every hour of the day about the road conditions. And as we begin to disseminate this out for the user as they're driving down the road, but it can also be used internally for that performance measure information that we're now having to collect, because that environment is changing as well.
Thank you. We've made it through all of the questions that were submitted.
Thank God. I want you guys to give Greg the same.
Yeah, how about that? That's pretty awesome. High stress. Thank you so much, Director Patterson, for your sharing your insights. I know we have one more keynote speaker before our break, but real quick, I want to say, I know we have over 37,000 people die on our highways every year, and autonomous vehicles, I think, is the first real option to bring that number down to at or close to zero. So I think we have to reassure folks and people like AAA who are standing up and saying that they support autonomous vehicles. That's huge. We have to educate our public. All right. Our next keynote speaker. All right, here we go. Settle down, folks. All right. Our next keynote speaker is Mr. Greg Winfrey. He was appointed the agency director for the Texas Transportation Institute of Texas A&M in December of 2016. TTI is the largest and most comprehensive higher education affiliated transportation research institute in the United States. Winfrey joined the U.S. Department of Transportation's Office of Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology as general counsel, and was later the assistant secretary. Also during his tenure, he served as deputy administrator and administrator of the predecessor agency, commonly known as RETA, Research and Innovation Technology Administration. As the assistant secretary, he was the senior executive responsible for more than 1,000 scientific data analysis and administrative staff members who support the U.S. DOT's multimodal transportation initiatives. The program offices under his purview included Volpe Center, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, the Intelligent Transportation Systems Joint Program Office, and the Transportation Safety Institute, just to name a few. Prior to his U.S. DOT service, Mr. Winfrey was a corporate counsel for several Fortune 500 companies in various technical industries. Let's see, Mr. Winfrey has his degree from St. John's University and his Juris Doctorate from Georgetown University. Help me welcome Mr. Greg Winfrey.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for reading the intro that my mother prepared. It's a great pleasure to be here with you back in the great state of Oklahoma. I'd like to thank Dr. Musharraf Zaman for inviting me to be part of this important conversation about the evolving future of transportation, and it's always a pleasure to be in the presence and to share the dais with Secretary Patterson. So thank you so much for the warm welcome to your great state, and certainly my appreciation to all of you who've made me feel so welcome. Now, as a former Assistant Secretary of Transportation for the U.S. Department of Transportation and now TTI Agency Director, I've seen firsthand just about every day how quickly transportation technology and research is evolving and transforming our everyday lives. And certainly those robust questions you asked have shown the keen interest in this area. So I thought perhaps before I get to the formal kind of stock TTI presentation, I would dive back in and pick up from where the Secretary left off and maybe address some of those items. So first I'm going to take you back to about 2014, a little bit of inside baseball in Washington for those who care. I hope you don't care, but things do every once in a while happen that are of occurrence in Washington. So part of that was the Intelligent Transportation Systems Joint Program Office. Many of you will remember connected vehicle technologies, right? And that was a system that utilized a dedicated radio frequency spectrum so that vehicles could talk literally to one another and provide critical safety information to cut down on the incidence of crashes and roadway fatalities. As you've heard, the number dipped as low as 34,000 during my tenure, but it has been creeping back up into the 37,000 humans range. And that's an unacceptable number for a country as civilized and as advanced as the U.S., but it's a background number that we seem to tolerate. You know, some of the statistics I used to state were we would not tolerate 300 737s crashing on an annual basis, but for some reason, a 37,000 roadway fatality number is deemed to be the background and acceptable. So connected vehicle is what we were talking about. It was human-driven vehicles, perhaps with an eye toward what was coming down the pike, communicating and avoiding crashes. And then in 2014, Google came out with their self-driving car and co-opted the field and co-opted the rhetoric about technology in the transportation and mobility space. So everyone jumped on the bandwagon, automated vehicles, autonomous vehicles, that's the new rage, and the conversation about connected vehicles kind of fell to the wayside. Well, as a defensive tactic, but also as an observation that any vehicle that's operating in an automated fashion that's not connected to either the infrastructure or other vehicles around it is going to have a rather lonely existence sitting on the on-ramp of the future if vehicles do not know that it's there, right? So connected vehicles were intended to have vehicles ride in much closer formation to get the efficiencies from a drafting and from a throughput perspective, and having that wireless communication network is what allowed for vehicles to ride in close formation. So if an automated vehicle is sitting on an on-ramp and nobody knows it's there, there will never be a logical break in the traffic until rush hour was over. So that is how the term connected automated vehicle got to be accepted as a normative thinking about how this technology would roll forth. And even companies like Google that for the longest time fought any kind of perception that they would need any other sensor technology other than what they developed to help their vehicle operate optimally fell to the wayside. So if you hear from Waymo now, they will say that connected vehicle technologies are part of the suite of sensors that they will need to have an automated vehicle travel safely and efficiently. Now, you may have heard me use the term automated and autonomous. One of the things that we were careful about at DOT is that there is a distinction there. And as the Secretary has pointed out, autonomous technology is already here. It's automated emergency braking, it's lane change assist, it's adaptive cruise control. These are technologies that are driver assistance technologies. So if perhaps you're digging for a French fry and you look up and the car is stopped in front of you, your car will be able to make that emergency braking stop to avoid a crash. Or if you're drifting while you're on the roadways, it will follow the lane stripes and the edge stripes to keep you within the lane. So these technologies are here. Autonomous technology is here, as the Secretary has pointed out. But the next challenge is, and the most vexing challenge, is automated, fully automated. So if you look at the Society of automotive engineer scale. There's 0 to 5 levels of automation, 0 being no automation, 5 being full automation. The trick and the fly in the ointment is how do we get to level 4, which is high automation, how do we get to level 5, which is full automation? And what that means is the vehicle can perform the primary tasks of driving without driver input. That's the key. So the autonomous technologies that are here are driver assist. The driver remains in the loop, and the driver is still the principal responsible party for the vehicle travel and for the vehicle outcomes. One of the tricky areas is what is known as level 3, which conditional automation, and a lot of manufacturers are shying away from level 3 because of the complexities it provides. So level 3 as conditional automation means that the driver is in the loop, but the car is performing the primary function, but at some point there needs to be a handoff. If the vehicle can't figure out a challenging scenario, it will hand it back to the driver. But guess what? Studies we did with NHTSA said that it takes a human driver 6+ seconds to get reoriented if he or she's not fully engaged in the driving task. So if you have 2 seconds to correct a crash scenario and 6 seconds to figure out what the heck happened, that's about 4 seconds of unconscious before the EMTs arrive to help extricate you from the vehicle, right? So that is not a primary driving scenario. So level 3 is something that you'll hear manufacturers shying away from. So those are important concepts to keep in mind. Autonomous technologies are here. Automated is what the holy grail of what all of this technological research and innovation is focused on, but that's the vexing challenge. So if you look at what the Secretary provided with the 1901 New York going from horses and one horseless carriage to 13 years later, one horse and all horseless carriages, that's probably about the time frame we can anticipate, about 12 to 15 years. He's absolutely correct. We will see these technologies in freight and low speed and fleet applications. So large VA hospitals, maybe the military bases, maybe delivery of freight, you'll start to see, or even rental car services for folks coming to driving scenarios in which they're not familiar. We'll start to see that there. But for the average driver to put these vehicles in their driveway, it's probably still about a good 12 to 15 years away, and I think that matches with what we've seen historically. So some of the challenges as we start to think about what this all looks like, you know, there's a period that I've been calling the mosh pit. So for those of us who remember maybe punk rock from the 80s, maybe grunge from the 90s, there was some kind of activity whenever a band was on stage where a lot of dancers would get up in the front. It was called a mosh pit. It wasn't quite dancing, it was bumping into each other. Sometimes fist fights would break out. That's what automobiles and travel and mobility is going to look like for the next 20 to 30 years. It's going to be a mosh pit. We're going to have analog vehicles like the Secretary's 68 Mustang and my 88 Mazda RX-7 convertible. And then we're going to have fully automated digital vehicles like the little buggy thing you saw from Google and others, all trying to operate in the roadway at the same time. But the challenge is human drivers are still in the mix, and human drivers are extraordinarily unpredictable. And then we're going to have digital vehicles that are following a binary code, ones and zeros. So the way I've been saying it is, day one, the switch comes on, and there's 50% automated vehicles and 50% human-driven vehicles, and the light turns yellow. What happens? All the human drivers speed up to make the light. All the digital vehicles come to a halt so that they don't run the light. Instant conflict, day one, first stop sign. So these are some of the challenges that we have to think about from a policy perspective, particularly as we work with legislators on how is this all going to work. Dedicated lanes we hear about, but that's a challenge. We already are constricted in our roadways. So how are we going to accommodate all of this new stuff coming down the pike and avoiding the mosh pit? So some questions came up about pedestrians and vehicles and how do they interact. That's a great question, but don't forget, part of this discussion is the C, the connected automated vehicles. So connected vehicle technology, when we worked on it at US DOT, focused on V to V, vehicle to vehicle, V to I, vehicle to infrastructure, but also V to X. And V to X was vehicle to everything. Now, when I was in Washington, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy looked at V to X being the foundation of the Internet of Things. That's when everything is connected. So in Japan, for example, they're working on chipsets that school kids can put in their backpacks that carry at the time it was called Dedicated Short-Range Communications, DSRC, 5.9 gigahertz. I stay away from referring to that because it remains controversial, but the idea about wireless connectivity needs to carry forward. So the DSE protocols are out there and they're mature, and that's what a lot of the world is focusing on. So in Japan, they're working on chipsets for kids' backpacks, DSRC, so that when they cross the street, as you know, school kids are sometimes a little lower than hood height, particularly for those of us in Texas and Oklahoma with the prevalence of pickups, right? Sometimes you can't see munchkins as they cross the street. Well, if they have wireless connectivity, then they'll be able to communicate to your vehicle that they're in the vicinity. The same for folks in the disability community, the same for other folks, vulnerable road users, whether they're on bicycles, whether they're on scooters, skateboards. All of this will be part of the communication network that ultimately provides a safe environment for all travelers. The question also came up about motorcycles and automation. I'm a motorcyclist. I've ridden from Phoenix to Hartford to my brother's home about 6 times, and folks think, my parents certainly think I'm nuts for undertaking such an enterprise, but I've had a chance to ride across many of the highways and byways of the country on 2 wheels, and I can tell you that motorcycles will be part of this connected environment as well. Matter of fact, when I was at USDOT, I helped found an organization called the Connected Motorcycle Consortium. So BMW, Honda, and Yamaha are all working on technology that will put motorcycles into the communication network. Now, that doesn't mean they want control given up from the rider, but there is a simple beacon called a vehicle awareness device. Here I am, so that classic, often fatal interaction between motorcycles and other roadway users, left turn across pathway, is avoided. So if a vehicle that has automatic emergency braking or other technologies in this connected environment starts to make a left turn in front of a motorcycle or any other vehicle that they didn't see, they will get a signal. So some of the technology out there involve haptic signals where you get a vibration in the seat. And this vibration is so specified that if they're coming from the left, you'll get it in your left butt cheek, and if they're coming from the right, you'll get it in the right. So that's what this technology promises to bring to drivers to help increase their situational awareness. And if the driver still insists on making the turn across pathway, then that's where automatic emergency braking will kick in. So these are just some of the technologies that are coming down the pike that I thought was important for me to touch back on before I jump into the presentation as my folks have put it together. So I won't tarry too long, but I do want to talk a little bit about TTI. Okay, now there's 4 buttons, and there we go. I did hit the right one. So TTI was established in 1950, and I'll go through these quickly, largely as the research arm for TxDOT, Texas DOT. We're a state agency. We're one of 7 state agencies under the Texas A&M umbrella. There are 3 under engineering. So it's TTI, it's an organization called TEAS, the Engineering Experiment Station. That's affiliated with our academics. And TEAX, the Engineering Extension Service. They provide a lot of service around the state and internationally for first responder training, disaster recovery, and those kinds of affiliated services. You can see just some of the historic photos in the top left. That's kind of the old way crash tests were done, metal barrels on metal bumpers. Quite effective in those days. To the right, we have an instrumented bridge deck. We're able to test stressors of vehicle traffic traversing it. And the bottom left is I-635 outside of Dallas, a project that we have with TxDOT. So our current research emphases, the research has grown dramatically over the years. As I said, we started out principally in helping Texas implement that interstate highway system that the Secretary presented. Texas, much like Oklahoma, is blessed with a lot of real estate, but some of it is difficult to access. So in Texas, we've developed what are known as farm-to-market roads. You've seen those FMs. That's what the FM stands for, and literally, it was designed to help farmers get their agricultural products much easier to market. So that's how the FM system started, much with the support and development of technologies at TTI. So now we're looking at technology, connected automated vehicles, mobility, and human behavior. As you've heard, human behavior is going to be quite a facet in how do we adopt to a future with self-driving vehicles. What is my mother going to think when she looks over and there's nobody driving the car next to her, right? That's not something that I want to be around for, but it's something that we all need to prepare for. And we got to think about this. What does driver's ed look like for kids in the future in a self-driving environment? What do they need to know? How will they be able to operate in these vehicles? It's one thing to be a passive occupant. It's quite another to have to step in and maybe perform some driving tasks in an emergency situation, assuming that a steering wheel is there, right? So driver's ed is going to change. The need for driver engagement and occupant engagement is going to significantly change. So just some of these photos here. The upper left is the common depiction of connected vehicle technology. The top right is some machine visioning project that we did in concert with 3M. And you heard the Secretary mention that lane striping and edge striping is going to be key at the front end for automated vehicle travel. It's going to need to follow those bright lines in order to know where it's going to travel. So some of the things maybe to think about looking forward is if your lane and edge stripes are in need of repair, then maybe in investing that at the front end, which will benefit human drivers with brighter conspicuity on darkened roadways. Well, that will also work to the benefit of self-driving vehicles when they come down the pike. And, you know, we all point the finger at California, but they're out in front in their state legislature in considering adopting or moving away from the federal highway standard 4-inch wide stripe to perhaps 6 or even 8 inches to assist with self-driving technology. So again, that's something that could very well benefit the rollout of automated vehicles in this state going forward, but it could certainly benefit human drivers as well. Did I do that? Did I do that? Okay, so the bottom picture of the bus, that's technology we're working on with Mobileye. That is a pedestrian detection system that helps drivers of the fleet buses on campus know when there is human traffic around them. And then the bottom is just some of our work with human behavior, and that truck is going through some signalized gantries that we operate. These are just some of the areas, the 12 core areas of disciplines at TTI. That's certainly speaks for itself, but I think as we look at mobility nowadays, the power is in the combinations and what can be unleashed by having organizations or parts of the organization that haven't traditionally worked together do so. So just some quick facts about TTI. 62.5 million was our income, if you will, research expenditures. For last year, we're probably closer to 67 million. This year, 13.5 million comes from the feds, 29 million from the state. Now, that number breaks down with TxDOT, and there's also a small percentage of funding we get from the state legislature. About 13% of our funding comes from the Texas state legislature, but we're largely an eat what you kill organization. It's sponsored research, and it's working with partners, stakeholders across the transportation and other enterprises. We also have the workforce development and student education mission. 200 plus students work with us on an annual basis, and it breaks down to over 200 public and private sponsors and over 700 projects on an annual basis. These are just our locations around the state of Texas. We have 8 urban locations that work closely with the locales where they're oriented. Several of these offices were mandated by the legislature. So El Paso, for instance, helps with international border crossings, freight movements, and Mexican truck issues. The star, of course, would be Bryan College Station, and you can see where our other offices are around the state. We have a presence in Washington, D.C., Mexico City, and Doha, Qatar, on the Texas A&M International Campus. And we've been in 50 states and 48 countries around the world. I'm just coming back from Namibia 2 weeks ago, where we're working with the Namibian Road Authority on helping them scope out their road network. Namibia is quite interesting. From a geological and geographical perspective, it's quite reminiscent of the Southern Plains. It looks a lot like what you see in Oklahoma and a lot like what you see in West Texas. So it is an area in which some of our historical and legacy expertise may be impactful, but I think there are opportunities for all of us to learn and be able to try out new innovations in Namibia that otherwise maybe have more legislative or other hurdles here in the U.S. It's a state about the size of Texas, but they've got 2.5 million inhabitants, so they've got a lot of real estate in which innovation can be experimented. This is our RELIS campus. RELIS is all capitalized, and that stands for the 6 core values of the university, which are respect, excellence, leadership, loyalty, integrity, and selfless service. It is a 2,000-acre former Bryan Army Air Corps base formed in about 1943 to support the World War II effort. We've had astronauts, Buzz Aldrin trained there, and several other astronauts. We've had the WASP, the women pilots, as well as Tuskegee Airmen that have trained at this historic base. It's been in the A&M portfolio since 1961. My organization has done historical testing for crash tests and roadside safety and perimeter barriers at that location, but we're now converting it to a 21st century education, research, and excellence campus in partnership with several corporate partners. Our crash testing is done in an area known as the historic campus, and TTI's new headquarters will be in the area identified as the research centers. We also have a partnership with a 2-year college. Blinn College is a pretty significant and long-term 2-year college in and around Central Texas. They have a presence on that campus as well, so we have the ability for educational throughput from certificates to associate degrees, all the way through to doctorate degrees. And our 10 other university system campuses will have a virtual presence. So if a kid from Brazos Valley wants to take marine biology at Galveston but doesn't want to travel to Galveston, he or she can do that at this RELIS campus. So the Proving Ground, this is what I was just talking about. These are just some of the photos showing the roadside safety and physical security testing underway at the Proving Grounds. Now, most recently, we've leveraged our roadside safety and perimeter security research into a relatively new area of designing and testing bollards to help storefront crashes that have prominently been in the news recently over the past several years. And you may have seen these stories on some of the news shows or even on your local news, where a vehicle sitting in a parking lot somehow or other accelerates and those metal poles that are out front just collapse. They're not really designed to withstand any sort of force. They are barely steel pipes filled with concrete. So there was some testing that was done out at our Proving Ground with a company working on some stainless steel protection devices that worked much better. And that story was captured on the NBC Today show, one of the Rossen reports. So these are some of the industry partnerships we have at RELIS. As you heard about, 3M is prominent in road materials and conspicuity for lane edging and striping and sign visibility. They're partnering with us to provide a rain range, so we'll be able to test automated vehicle technologies in a variety of climatic conditions, from rain to fog. It does get cold enough in Brazos Valley to incorporate some semblance of snow. It won't stick around long, but we'll see what we can do. But we can work with inclement weather, and their interest is also in faculty and graduate student research support. Econolite, the company that provides a lot of the signal phasing timing equipment that you and your locales have in the boxes at the intersections, is providing equipment for a smart intersection test that we're doing with TxDOT. And a company named Neology is putting in an R&D facility for tolling, public safety, and electric vehicle registration technologies. And Neology recently bought the 3M division that provided that, but in their acquisition, they didn't get access to a proving ground, so they're coming out to Rellis to do so. We were also formerly one of the US DOT AV proving grounds. That designation recently has been reanalyzed by the department, but we still were one of the 10 AV proving ground partnerships. It is still the national automated proving ground for the testing of connected automated vehicle technologies, and our partners are University of Texas Center for Transportation Research and the Southwest Research Institute in Austin. Much like what the Secretary showed with Oklahoma being able to amass many of its locales under the umbrella, we also have 31 locales around the state that have agreed to be a part of this testing scenario. So one of the things that perhaps is of benefit as a state that's neighboring Oklahoma, Texas has opened its borders for the testing of automated vehicle technologies. I wish I could stand here today and say I knew how many companies are operating, but there's no registration requirement. There's no vehicle requirement from a respective of proving vehicle safety. They do have to follow what NHTSA put forth with respect to the FMVSSs and other safety requirements, but Texas is open for business, and we are your nearest southern neighbor, so we're happy and very much interested in working collaboratively with this great state. So I spent some time on a visit to Korea. Asia is very much interested in a concept known as the Industrial Revolution 4.0. So this infographic illustrates the various stages of the Industrial Revolution. 1.0 was the first stage of mechanization and the introduction of steam power. Industry 2.0 introduced electrical energy with plant assembly lines and mass production methods. Industry 3.0 began the computer age with electronics and automation. And Industry 4.0 encompasses interconnected networks, the Internet of Things, and cyber physical systems. Now, we have our heels still in Industry 3.0 to be sure, but our toe is crossing into Industry 4.0. And indeed, it's an exciting time to be in the transportation innovation business. So elements of Industry 4.0. Cyber physical systems, or CPS technology, will transform the way people interact with engineered systems, just as the internet has transformed the way people interact with information. So new smart CPS will drive innovation and competition in sectors such as transportation, energy, agriculture, building design and automation, healthcare, and manufacturing. Our entire lives will be driven by technology as they are in the Dick Tracy and Jetson cartoons many of us grew up with. And the reason I put those up there, for those who remember the Dick Tracy watch phone, that's here, as we all know, right? The iPhone does everything the Dick Tracy watch said. So what was flights of fancy in the not too distant past are here today, and certainly we could say the same with the Jetsons, although we don't have Alice yet. We are talking about putting humans in low orbit transport with Uber Elevate and other companies that are involved with looking at innovation in this space. And you know, you can look at Uber as perhaps a company that's a lot of hype. It certainly is, but they've got real partners behind them. They're working with Airbus, they're working with Boeing, they're working with Sikorsky. So this is real technology that is, we've heard earlier, technology moves apace. It'll be here sooner than we think, and something that seems as fanciful as the Jetsons may be the way we move around Norman and we move around Oklahoma City and Stillwater. So Industry 4.0 depends on big data. Connecting big data is the key to unlocking many benefits of Industry 4.0. Data gathered by large traffic management systems such as Houston's TransStar, which we show in the photo, will be mined more deeply to derive useful kernels of information to help mitigate traffic congestion, determine appropriate locations for toll roads, for example, and make other decisions to improve our transportation system. So I'll quickly move into discussing some of TTI's groundbreaking research for Industry 4.0. Now, as the Secretary talked about, connected work zones, work zone fatalities and work zone issues are a vexing issue across the country. On average, 118 road construction workers have lost their lives in the U.S. over the last decade, with an average of 13 lives lost in the state of Texas each year. And we have a multi-year project sponsored by TxDOT for developing research, innovation, and deployment in traveler information, mobility coordination, and work zone safety for a 96-mile, $2.1 billion construction project on Interstate 35 in Central Texas. TTI has created an innovative, connected, real-time traveler information system that provides pre-trip and en route traveler information across multiple outreach channels. This connected corridor, which is one of our automated proving ground testbed sites, has gained state, national, and international recognition, setting the stage for future research and deployment projects in this area. And here's a quick video that explains more about this initiative.
TI and the Texas Department of Transportation created a first-of-its-kind 100-mile-long connected work zone on Interstate 35.
We lead the nation in the amount of crashes in work zones. So when we introduce connected and automated transportation, we're looking at how can we bring those numbers down? How can we improve mobility for individuals? How can we reduce the number of crashes across the state and really drive that number down?
This vehicle and this road are engaged in a conversation.
Mooring operation for illumination installation. Right shoulder closed daily until 4 p.m. Right.
It's the newest phase of a chat that began about 6 years ago on I-35 between smart message boards and drivers. Now, the road is talking to a phone.
The application is a prototype for a connected vehicle environment. The type of information that you get would be incidents, slowdowns in traffic, even end-of-queue warning systems.
Okay. Now, next, wrong-way driving mitigation. Now, I know Oklahoma, I used to live in Arizona. The big western states have issues with drivers getting on the interstate going the wrong direction that often has catastrophic outcomes. So TTI has conducted human factors studies to investigate the information needs of right-way drivers when a wrong-way driving event occurs, as well as the design of wrong-way driver alerts displayed on dynamic message signs and through in-vehicle systems. Using DSRC, dedicated short-range communications, and through in-vehicle systems, using DSRC mounted along the roadway to detect a connected vehicle as it entered a highway exit ramp from the wrong direction, our researchers successfully tested a proof of concept connected vehicle wrong-way driving detection and management system at the Rellis campus last year.
So the Texas Department of Transportation asked Texas A&M Transportation Institute and Southwest Research Institute to look at new ways to combat wrong-way driving. And one of the concerns was being able to detect the wrong-way driver more quickly, as well as alerting motorists that are going the right way in their vehicle. And so to do that, we look to connected vehicle technologies.
So what we're going to see as we approach as the wrong-way driver is we will see the traditional infrastructure devices that TxDOT has implemented. It will detect us through a radar system, but then almost simultaneously we will also be detected by the dedicated short-range radio.
The technology that's used to connect vehicles, detect a wrong-way driver, send a message to a traffic management center, alert the wrong-way driver, and alert right-way drivers via in-vehicle messages.
Home base, Lone Star, are you ready?
10-4, we're ready here. Drive safely, everyone.
When connected vehicle technology is deployed, people that are traveling on the freeway system could then potentially get messages in their vehicles that would warn them of hazards. And we are specifically looking at alerting them for wrong-way drivers in their area so that they would be more aware of what's going on and be able to make decisions on the actions they want to take.
If you're getting on the exit ramp from the wrong direction, you're obviously on the front edge road.
That's correct.
And maybe even roads preceding that.
right? So depending on the area that your DSRC would be broadcasting and how wide it is, it could pick you up even on the frontage road system.
The system that we developed for TxDOT as part of this project was a prototype testbed system at the Texas A&M Rellis campus. So now we need to move it to a real roadway where we have challenges in the design due to horizontal, vertical curvature, sight distance issues. So we'd be looking to fund a model field deployment. Our primary location that we're looking at is on State Highway 47 in Brazos County.
Okay, now just on to truck platoon. I've just got a couple of videos that I think are important to show. I'm mindful of time, so I will go on through those, and then maybe if there's a minute or two for questions, that would be great. But TTI led a truck platooning project for TxDOT that was demonstrated at the TTI Proving Ground at Rellis. Truck platooning extends radar and vehicle-to-vehicle communications-based cooperative adaptive cruise control using precise vehicle controls to maintain a tight formation of vehicles with short following distances. A manually driven truck leads a platoon, allowing the drivers of the following trucks to disengage from primary driving tasks and monitor system performance. Truck platooning has demonstrated the potential for significant fuel savings, enhanced mobility, reductions of emissions from platooning vehicles, and increased safety. The goal of the project was to develop near-term guidance for the Texas Department of Transportation and other stakeholders to prepare Texas for deploying truck platooning on key facilities across the TxDOT freight network. Now here's a brief video showing a 2-truck platoon. Doesn't have sound, but it'll show you how it operates. So the first truck, of course, has the human driver. The second one has a driver, but he's not engaged in the driving task. Steering and acceleration and braking are controlled via the first vehicle. So it follows what I call the GPS breadcrumbs laid forth by the lead vehicle and follows precisely behind it. And as you can see, some of the runways we have at Rellis are over 500 feet wide, so we can accommodate high-speed travel as well as full U-turn capabilities for these articulated vehicles. Smart highway infrastructure is vehicle technologies. Oh, didn't want to go there just yet.
This car before, it's really.
Okay, smart highway infrastructure. As vehicle technology continues to expand into new areas, a need is developing to synchronize vehicle technology capabilities with traditional physical highway structure. One of the most heavily used elements, as we talked about, of the physical infrastructure space on a highway is its pavement markings. Many new vehicles use cameras and machine visioning algorithms to detect and read pavement markings to provide features such as lane departure warnings and lane keeping distance and assistance. TTI is leading a research project designed to develop pavement marking criteria that will provide reliable detection with in-vehicle camera systems. The results will be used by agencies interested in specifying and maintaining their highways to a level that will provide reliable machine vision detection. And we took our chancellor of the A&M system for a ride to demonstrate this technology. I must have an itchy trigger finger. There we go.
This car before, it's really disconcerting to be able to kind of look in the back seat and the car is tooling on down the road and braking properly and staying in the right lane properly.
This symbol just came up, so it says it's ready. So to activate it, you pull that one twice real quick. And you're done.
And now what?
You can let go.
Okay, look bomb, no hands.
You're doing it.
So your contract is to, what has to be on the road so that these cars can read it and be safe driverless?
Right. And we're hoping that this research is just the beginning of automated vehicle testing and research out at Rellis. The Rellis campus is a unique facility that allows us to configure different testing scenarios when we're doing testing like this. This is the type of infrastructure things that we're trying to address so that these vehicles can operate safer and we can accelerate the safety benefits of these vehicles.
video a couple of heavy vehicles following the research. That is on a high-speed state highway in Texas with a 75-mile-an-hour speed limit, and we were going 45 miles an hour. So in order to increase our safety profile, we made sure we had as much conspicuity as possible, but that was on a public roadway during a traffic period. So finally, I'll just put up a quick slide that includes some of the connected automated vehicle research vehicles that we have. Researchers from the university, our academic partners, and TTI's sister agency, the Experiment Station, as I mentioned, are developing the next generation of driverless vehicles, which will be tested at facilities on the Rellis campus, as well as across the Texas A&M University campus. We have a campus technology initiative, transportation technology initiative, where we're bringing 21st century innovations to the campus and to the community. We're also running a driverless shuttle in the city of Bryan, which is the city north of College Station, in our twin city metropolis of Bryan College Station. So experts from Texas A&M Engineering are collaborating, as I said, on the safety, reliability, and function of these vehicles. This slide shows the three vehicles: the Lincoln MKZ Hybrid, which has been outfitted with a suite of sensors, LiDAR for object and obstacle detection, radar for detecting other vehicles, and cameras for traffic light signs and pedestrian detection. The self-driving car follows a predetermined path based on GPS waypoints. The car autonomously or automatedly, to use a bad mnemonic, travels at speeds from 20 to 35 miles an hour. The middle photo at the top shows the Texas A&M University College of Engineering students who recently placed second in the Auto Drive Challenge held in Yuma, Arizona, sponsored by General Motors and the Society for Automotive Engineers. Texas A&M team named the 12th Unmanned achieved, if you know the 12th man is kind of, okay, you get it. The 12th Unmanned achieved the fastest performance time while successfully detecting and avoiding obstacles. And the driverless shuttle at the top left will be pilot tested on the Texas A&M University campus this November. And a quick video of the Lincoln, and I will close out there, folks. It looks like I'm stuck in limbo. Well, you've all seen a car before. So why don't I leave it there and make sure that we stay on schedule. Thank you for your time and your attention, and thank you for the invitation. It's been a great pleasure.
There are a couple of questions for you. Director Winfrey, there's a couple of questions for you.
Oh, sure.
What is the right balance between the roles of technology companies and the government when it comes to automated vehicles?
You know, that's a great question, and it tends to vary depending on who sits in the White House. I think the current thinking is that industry should take the lead and government should prescribe according to innovations as they are set forth. I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach, but industry needs to be watched carefully. And the reason I say that, I just read, just yesterday as a matter of fact, that NHTSA had to shut down an automated shuttle test program at the Babcock Ranch in Florida because this shuttle, rather than working in a low-speed fashion just to check efficacy, they were actually transporting students. Okay, so industry tends to get out in front, and that's the role of government to rein it back and to ensure safety. I think we saw the same thing with the Tesla autopilot crash, where that vehicle unfortunately crashed under a semi. And we certainly saw the same thing with testing on open roadways in Phoenix, where the Uber driver or the Uber vehicle unfortunately had a fatality with a pedestrian and a bicycle. So that's the role of government, to ensure that innovation proceeds at a pace that ensures the safety of the public. But by the same token, we want the impetus and the excitement and the urgency of industry to get out there and develop these technologies. So it's a push-pull. There's no right way, but I would say from a macro perspective, it's government's job to make sure that it's being done safely, and it's industry's job to push the envelope as far and as fast as they can.
We'll address one more right now so that we can go to break, but if you wouldn't mind, could we please address these others later in the day?
Sure, absolutely.
Fantastic, thank you for that. What measures are being taken to help secure the confidence of users in preventing hacking of the communication between the vehicles and the infrastructure?
That's one of the primary issues and concerns at the front end. Cybersecurity and hardening the ability for malicious actors to interfere from an electronic perspective. There are several pathways, unfortunately, into the vehicle. It's not just connected vehicle technologies, but we all need to be cognizant that GPS is an extraordinarily fragile system that relies on a weak signal from space. It is 10 to the minus 15 decibels, so I'll let you engineers figure out how weak that is, but it's an extraordinarily weak signal from space that's susceptible to jamming, spoofing, and malicious state action. So North Korea and Russia are known to be actively engaged in trying to jam the GPS signal across the globe, including here in the US. There have been instances. So it's a weak signal, but it's foundational for this technology. So we need to be cognizant about GNSS, Global Navigation Satellite Systems. We need to be cognizant about Wi-Fi and other, we need to be cognizant about the CAN bus interface on the vehicles and introducing viruses and other bad information through systems that can get into networks. I can tell you that at DOT, they're certainly well aware of all of these pathways and are working across industry and with, importantly, the data and the data science industry to harden these assets. But that's a critical question going forward. It's going to impact uptake because if the American public doesn't have confidence in privacy or in the ability to have their information protected or their vehicles kept safe from harm, then this technology is not going to advance, and we will continue to have 37,000 roadway fatalities. But that's a great question, and that's something that's being taken very seriously. Okay, my pleasure.
Are European countries further along with using automated vehicles?
The question is, are European countries farther along? The answer is no. We're working in concert at the international level on developing automated and connected vehicles, starting with organizations like CAMP, the Collision Avoidance Metrics Partnership, that's grown into collaborative projects, et cetera, with Europe and Asia. So if you look at the globe from a three-region perspective, there's been ITS Americas, ITS Europe, known as ERTICO, and ITS Asia. Those are still the umbrella organizations that have been kind of managing the automated vehicle space. Now, here in the US, AUVSI has stepped into that void as well, looking at the issues that started on their end with drones, et cetera, unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned aerial services. So those are kind of the players in the space. So I wouldn't say Europe is farther along. Asia very well could be slightly ahead with respect to the development of automated vehicles, but the regions are still working in concert. The Americas are focused on the safety aspects. The Europeans are focused on ecological or environmental issues, eco-routing, et cetera, and Asia focuses on the benefits from congestion mitigation and tolling. So they're all working collaboratively in this space, and they each have their instant deliverables, but it contributes to the overall whole.
How will autonomous vehicles work when there is snow on the ground or any inclement weather that inhibits the view of that stripe?
As it stands now, machine visioning is the principal technology for self-driving vehicles. So issues like inclement weather, like we see here in this region and in Texas with heavy rain, that'll be problematic. Fog, snow, anything that tends to obscure machine visioning or the ability to read lane and edge stripings would be problematic. There are technologies that are being developed that can help machines either from having their own inertial devices that work with accelerometers and GPS to provide precise locationing. Those are under development, but as it stands now, machine visioning is the name of the game, principally for what will soon to be commercial usages of that technology. So that's why you're seeing companies like 3M, like Swarco, and other companies that work on high conspicuity for road markings, et cetera, as well as sensor companies working on technologies that can help improve the guidance going forward.
And I guess as a follow-up to that would be, what about the areas that lack an edge stripe, like in the rural areas?
That's a good
County
question.
roads.
Rural areas, right, so we have significant issues in the country in what we used to historically call the digital divide. I think that now transfers over to some of the complexities with respect to the future of transportation and mobility. But I'm a huge proponent and advocate for automated vehicles providing benefits in rural communities as well. The question is, how will they operate? What kind of technology will they use to operate? So at the front end, certainly for issues like getting patients to and from medical appointments, getting folks from remote areas to downtown, that can certainly work on roads that are edged and striped. But in Texas, as in Arizona, as in Oklahoma and Arizona, we have ranch roads, county roads, and AKA dirt roads. So figuring out how that means of transport and mobility can get folks from a remote ranch to the local post office will remain a challenge, but that is being looked at by innovators in this space. And again, that inertial sensor devices, the GPS, and other technologies are being looked at to augment what is currently now the standard with respect to machine visioning.
Another question has to do with industry standards. Do they exist for CAV and V2 infrastructure needs? If not, who is leading that charge?
Right now, it's all industry. There are no standards that are being followed from an industry perspective other than the technological package that's looking again at these guidance technologies or machine visioning. A lot of these efforts are proprietary. So Company A is working on their platform, Company B is working on their platform, and at this point, not a lot of cross-pollination of information. You do see discussions going on from a high-level perspective at organizations like ITS America or at AUVSI, but we're still in the phase and in the stage where it's proprietary. These commercial entities are all seeking to be first to market with these technologies, with the presumed attendant benefits one gets from being first to market. So right now, there hasn't really been a collaborative effort from an industry perspective to kind of coalesce around standard making, as you saw with connected vehicle technology.
Thank you very much for taking the time to answer those questions from this morning.